Hi, I'm Tom McBride, and in this lecture we'll look at reviews and critiques. Now what we'll look at is why it's important, what you're doing wrong, or more than likely doing wrong, what are they in the first place, what is a critique, what is a review, how to run a critique, and we'll look at some of the unwritten rules of critiques. Now we'll start in the introduction by talking about why is this important. Well, it's important because it's very difficult for any one person to get everything right. We know that better results come from having many eyes on anything really, from a diversity of views. So the whole point about a critique is to somehow elicit all of those different views in such a way that it can be constructive. Now, informal discussions rarely address the hard issues. If they did, it would be easy. You'd simply talk to people. We also know that experienced designers, experienced software architects, experienced software developers generally tend to do this because they know that they can get things wrong or they can miss things. So if this is good behavior, we want to encourage it. Now, the question comes, if this is so straightforward and obvious, wrong, why are we doing it wrong? Well, the answer is that most of the time people are ever so willing to help, but they don't quite know how. Now, in particular, they confuse a critique with criticism, and they think that the whole idea is to find fault in something. That's not the purpose, but that's often what happens. Another thing that happens is too many people get their egos involved, and they want to prove they're the smartest person in the room, or they want to prove that the other person doesn't know as much as they do. Now, this gets to be a problem. Problems that arise out of the critique itself is that frequently why you're doing a critique is not stated. So you have a purpose of the critique itself, and you have the purpose of whatever it is you're critiquing. Now, if those two things aren't known, you tend to get a lot of comments and feedbacks and observations that are not to the point, and this doesn't help at all. So in those circumstances, it's very easy for the critique to turn into an attack on the designer or the architect. Now, we've used the term critique, and I've used the term review. What are they? What's the difference? What is a critique? A critique is broadly a group discussion to elicit useful feedback about something. All right? It is not a criticism. It involves multiple people. It involves discussion, and the whole point is to get feedback about something. It is intended to help the author to improve whatever it is they've done. Now, it is just as important to identify whatever is good about the thing as it is to identify what's bad. In terms of the difference between a critique and a review, it really comes down to what your occupation is. Designers run critiques. They're familiar with that term, they use that term. Engineers run reviews. They're familiar with that term, they use that term. A critique is largely fairly unstructured because design tends to be fairly unstructured. Reviews tend to have more structure because what engineers do tends to have more structure. In engineering, particularly software engineering, you have requirements and there's some expectations for that. You have architecture, you have software itself, you have test specifications, you have these various things. And there are some expectations to them. Also, in software engineering and in engineering generally, you have different types of review. You have your basic peer review, which is very loose. You can go through a walkthrough, or you can have an inspection, or, if necessary, you can have an audit. All of these are varying in their degrees of rigor and their degrees of structure, but they're all intended for the same thing. So that's an introduction to it, and next we'll have a look at how to